In this video, we're going to show you how to install the Z1 2.5-inch cold air intake kit. As always, we will begin by disconnecting the negative battery cable and securely lifting the vehicle off of the ground using jack stands or a proper lift. To begin with, remove the hardware from the front bumper that attaches to the engine undershroud, as well as the side fender liners. Next, remove the clips from the inner fender liner wheel weld area on both sides. Then remove the bolts on each corner of the bumper that attach the bumper to the front fenders. Next, remove the clips that attach the bumper to the upper radiator air guide. At this point, we are ready to remove the front bumper. If you have daytime running lights, it'd be helpful to have an extra set of hands to assist you. Although it's not required, we like to remove the upper air guide to offer extra room while working on the intake. Next, we'll remove the clips for the center rear cowl cover to get access to the hardware for the strut tower bar. Using a 14mm, you'll now remove the hardware for the front strut tower bar. With the hardware removed, carefully lift the front strut tower bar away from the engine. Disconnect the mass airflow sensors. Be careful with the connectors, as we will need to reuse these. If you have an engine cover, use a 10mm to loosen the hardware and remove it. Using that same 10mm, you're now ready to remove the PCV breather tubes. Using a screwdriver or an 8mm socket, loosen the clamps that attach the intake tubes to the throttle bodies. Using a 10mm socket, remove the bolts that hold the airbox into the engine bay. Make sure you do this on both sides. Once the hardware is removed, it's now time to lift the entire intake assembly from the engine bay. It helps to wiggle the airbox to disconnect the clips located underneath it. It's now time to remove the OEM air inlet ducts. You'll do this using a 10mm and a pair of needle nose pliers. Now you're ready to install your new Z1 intake. You will begin by installing the Z1 throttle body couplers. Next, you will install the aluminum union pipe into the air filter using the clamp and filter provided. Make sure that you install the corrugated side of the union pipe into the filter. Next, you will install the provided Z1 silicone PCV breather hoses onto the valve covers. You will reuse your OEM clamps. It may be beneficial to use silicone spray when installing these hoses. Now you will remove your OEM mass airflow sensor and install it into the new intake tube. Be sure to install the mass airflow sensors in the correct direction according to the flow of air. It helps to lay the intake tubes side by side. You are now ready to install your new air intake tubes. Unlike the original intake system, the new intake tubes will have the mass airflow sensors facing downward. You are now ready to attach the PCV breather hoses to your new intake tubes. Again, you will use your OEM clamps for this part of the install. Carefully work the large silicone coupler around the AC lines and through the core support opening. For better fitment, you may want to expand the opening in the core support where the factory air duct was removed. However, this step is not required and it was not performed on this installation. Attach the silicone coupler to the intake tube inside the engine bay. Using a screwdriver or an 8mm socket, you can begin tightening the clamps. It may be helpful at this point to not tighten the clamps all the way to ensure final fitment. Now insert the smooth side of the union pipe into the silicone coupler above the crash bar. After installing the air filters, you can tighten the clamps all the way. Plug the connectors back into the mass airflow sensors and make sure that they are secure. You are now finished with your Z1 cold air intake kit. All that is left is to reinstall the front bumper in the reverse order of how you removed it.